Right.
I think he's saying that because every action is driven by a thought. So you have to thought
Okay.
it first
Right.
before you do it.
Right. Right. So the idea, right, is that really your behavior, it gets manifested, I mean, your thoughts rather gets manifested,
Yes,
you
sir.
know. And so really actions are not just random. They have a base. And so they're being processed in the brain. Now, the issue might be that some of your actions may not be conscious actions, but rather they are a subconscious action. But what you have to remember, even though the action may be subconsciously motivated, in order for it to be filed, it had to have been conscious. You follow? You
Yes, sir.
you actually consciously file the information, the thought. But later, once it's filed in the brain, it can have an automatic life of its own, where it will come. For example, if you were dreaming, sleeping, it can happen. Or if someone surprise you or shock you, you can have a response without actually thinking about it.
Okay, sir.
So for example, walking, now it's sort of an automatic response. However, as a child, you had to actually practice and learn walking where you fall many, many, many times until the ability becomes a reality and it gets filed. So if for whatever reason the house happens to be in fire, you don't have to think, how do I run? You're just going to just run. It's an automatic response. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
However, before that happened, it had to be filed before. So in a way, we are really responsible for all of our actions. That is why Paul and others insist that every thought that we will be held accountable for on the day of judgment, everything you've done, you will have to be held accountable for. So you can't say it was an accident. I know Paul says that, his behavior, he said, look, it was just ignorance. Well, the fact that Paul is arguing that it was because of ignorance why he did what he did, it doesn't mean that he didn't plan the action,
Yes, sir.
carefully calculated the action, and then went to carry it out. What he's simply saying is that he had the wrong data, the wrong information, and he filed the wrong information. Follow?
Yes, sir.
So, for example, there are sincere individuals who believe that they are saved, but they may not necessarily subscribe to the fact that water baptism is essential to salvation.
Yes, sir. Many are like this.
Right. But it's a conscious decision on their part. They have to process that first. So now it becomes an automatic process. They don't even have to think about it anymore. So once they sit with someone like you to open the scriptures and carefully go through the scriptures, then they can then say, maybe I was misguided and now I'm going to do the right thing. Or they can say, yeah, I like what you're saying. It sounds good. But they walk away and never really change. They still hold on because it's already filed there.
Yes,
So
sir.
at that point, it's not necessarily ignorance, but it might be stupidity at that particular point.
Yes, sir.
Because now their eyes have been opened and yet they still didn't follow through on it. Either way, the decision is being made in the brain and is stored there. So on the day of judgment, remember, God can read the brain. He understands it. He designed it, right? So he knows the content of the brain. So on the judgment day, he doesn't necessarily have to read out a list. He just knows what it is because he knows everything, right?
Yes, sir.
So he can see the intent of a man's heart. That is why Jesus was so hard on the Pharisees, because he was able to read, their storage, where they stored all this information. And he know that their behavior was actually coming from that source. Now, you and I can't really see the storage source of others. What we rely on is the behavior.
Yes, sir.
But the behavior can still be misguided, because I can give a lot of money to the poor. But at the same time, I may have an ulterior motive in doing it, isn't it? So, for example, Ananias and Sapphira, remember that story in Acts chapter 5? Where, let me just put this passage here just to remind you. I think it's Acts chapter 5, right?
Acts chapter 5.
Yeah, Acts, Acts chapter 5. Let me see. And I don't know from what verse it starts, but this is the man and his wife who actually sold their property, but they kept back some of the money.
Oh, okay. I see what you're talking about. Ananias and Sapphira.
Right. I don't know what verse it starts, but it's in chapter 5.
Yes, sir.
But you notice that the Holy Spirit was the one who discovered the infraction. You follow?
Yes, sir.
So the Holy Spirit was able to see, while the people in the audience actually, average person couldn't recognize it without the aid of the Holy Spirit.
Yes, sir.
So even though he appeared to be doing the right thing on the surface, his behavior looks good, but his thoughts, the source of it was corrupted.
Yes, sir.
And both he and his wife died as a result of that. Now, the question is whether they died because God, literally struck them down, or whether or not their conscience was so overwhelming that their heart stopped beating. Sometimes their guilt, the guilt could have been, because once you're exposed, then, it's a whole nother story. I think I've seen people who have actually go into panic and actually, was bent over and tremendous pain because a wrong that they've done was just discovered. And then when they look at the consequences of it, it was just too much for them to bear.
Yes.
Some people even kill themselves as a result of it, and some people just wind up they pass out. It was just too much.
Yes.
And they wind up in the emergency room.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not really sure if that was the case, what truly happened, in terms, but I do know once you've done something wrong and all of a sudden you overcome with this tremendous guilt because of the consequences of that. So one of the things that we do in where I work is, one of the questions that I have to ask, especially if you commit a crime, I have to then ask you whether or not this crime is going to cause you to lose standing in your community. And if it is, then I have to do something about it, because you may want to kill yourself. You remember the preacher? There's a situation in Jamaica where a preacher was doing something, I don't know, but I think they were shooting in a church, I guess, a service of some kind. And
Okay.
And the preacher, the main guy, died. There was an accident in the car, I guess, that the car overturned, I think. And some of the police officer who was in the car died, and I think he lost his life as well. Now, the question is whether or not he did orchestrate. In my mind, was he responsible for that accident in terms of recognizing, everything is uncovered, he's arrested, he's going to go to jail, he's a minister, he was high standing.
Are you talking about something that happened in Jamaica?
Yes, I think it was either early this year or last year.
Oh, okay, so well, there was a shooting as well, but it's because
In,
of a sacrifice.
in a church, in a church.
Yes, I remember. His name was Smith something. He has done
Right,
a sacrifice.
right. But yes, but he, I think they were transporting him, I guess,
Yes,
to court, and the car overturned.
yes,
And I think he died, and maybe an officer or something like that died, I guess,
yes,
too.
yes, sir.
So my question is, for me, it wouldn't be far-fetched for me to think that for whatever reason, he may have created a situation in the car that caused it to overturn. You know,
Yes,
either he got into a fight or he pulled whatever, because I suspect he was probably handcuffed, but I don't know. You know, because he was so popular and so famous that they may not have handcuffed him. I don't know.
yes,
But
sir.
I can see where there's a lot of shame that he was facing. So I can see where he may be willing to take his life, you know, because so that's one of the things that I try to find out from people at my job. You know, how did they feel about the crime? You know, because a certain crime, you would lose everything. You lose your job, you lose your wife, you lose your status, you lose your power. And so people like that, we have to protect them against themselves. We have to put them in suicidal watch, because they could harm themselves. So
Yes, sir.
that's one of the things as a psychologist where I work now. That's what they pay me for, to make sure that this don't become a liability to the system by ensuring that this man can be kept in the general population without protection, or do I need to put him in a in a suicidal garment, strip cell, and that kind of stuff in order to protect himself. For
Okay,
example, tomorrow I'll be seeing another inmate, another gentleman who is involved in a murder, and his case has been going on, and the chances are it look like he's going to lose. So you're looking at maybe 25 to life. So tomorrow he's already on my schedule to make sure, because I want to see how he's feeling about this.
okay, sir.
So when I interview him tomorrow, and I'm going to look to see if he wants to die. How does he feel about doing that much time in jail? This is a high profile person, police officer himself, and stuff like that. So
Okay,
tomorrow I'll make a decision as to whether or not to put him on suicide watch for the rest of his case, or to decide whether he can handle, what's going on.
okay, sir.
So now, because I'm trying to get into his head to prevent something seriously happening, because he's in the custody of the county, of the state. And if he kills himself in this facility, then the county is responsible. And the county will be sued
Okay,
because we're responsible for him, his safety and everything. So that's kind of where, but God does have that ability. It would have been nice if I had that ability. So I wouldn't even have to go to bring him to my office or go to his cell. I would know exactly what's going on with him.
okay, sir.
God can do that. And
Yes,
so if God can do that, that's where faith comes in on our part, to be able to recognize that God constantly is supervising and have access to the way we are storing material into our brain and what our thoughts are every second of the day. Once we have that conviction, then can you see how we may be changing, our behavior?
yes, sir.
So that's why I think the Bible insisting that once go through water baptism and you come up, you're a new person, you're united with Christ, you no longer, sin, you no longer do these things, you follow? Just as Christ died. And what it's really talking about, in my mind, is the growth of your faith, where you are cognizant of the constant supervision of God, that he is actually seeing every thought that you have. And once you are convicted of that, then I believe that you will be more disciplined in your speech, you'll be more disciplined in your actions, and you will process and evaluate your thoughts before you act them out. Because that's what, Paul talks about us being led by the Holy Spirit, guided by the Holy Spirit, live by the Holy Spirit. All of those terms are really talking about us in collaboration with God, are
Yes.
able to edit our thoughts constantly every second to make sure. And of course, we're going to have bad thoughts creep in from time to time. You know what I mean? I mean, you may see a lady that is really sexy and, skimpy dressed, and you're going to take a second peek. You follow?
Yes, sir.
You take, but then you may rationalize, and start criticizing her, because that's one of your criticism of that might be one of the ways that you're silencing yourself.
Yes, sir.
Or you can simply enjoy the look, the view, or you can choose to start, because once you start criticizing it, it's helping you to suppress some of your feelings that you may have. You follow? That's why people are so critical sometimes of others who may be dressed inappropriately. They're not criticizing them because they intentionally believe that it is necessarily inappropriate. It might be just their way of silencing themselves so they don't start having, lustful thoughts. So once you start convincing yourself this is bad, this is not good, this is nasty, this is ugly, you follow?
Yes,
Then
sir.
the brain aren't going to go where it's supposed to go.
Yes, sir. I learned something. I learned that when you tolerate something, it will never change. Most people are drinking and smoking. Each time they say to themselves that, well, I have to stop. I'm going to stop. And they never stop just because they still tolerate it. Or they.
Well, it's not necessarily, that's not the whole truth, because, like I said to you before, maybe in another class, that once you have a behavior and you have a reward, follow, you drink and you feel good, then
Yes,
the brain files that information.
yes,
And once it's filed that information, then we all want to feel good. So
yes,
even sometimes we don't want to do what we want to do, the brain triggers that, certain things in the environment. And so it's going to happen. And sometimes, though, the body may develop a biological dependency on the chemical. Once there is a dependency developed with the chemical, then even if you stop the chemical, you may go into shock. You may start shaking. You may even pass out. So that's why we have detox. And in the case of detox, you have to the person needs to be medically supervised before you can stop the drug, because the body will shut down and the person will die.
Okay, sir.
So sometimes, and that's, you're talking about social drinking, but I'm talking here about when the dependency develops. So when the dependency,
I just understand that when you eat something, most time you change it because you ate it, you don't want it that way. You're gonna make an effort to change it. That's what I'm saying.
Right. But however, if the thing that is, for example, why people subject themselves to developing diabetes when they know that too much sugar will eventually, cause diabetes. But we like sugar. In the Caribbean, we love everything sweet, don't we?
Yes, sir. I myself do.
Okay. So 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you might be one of those persons struggling with diabetes if you don't start cutting back on the intake of sugar and salt.
Yes,
so I'm just saying your habits, eventually, after a while, it becomes so dependent, the dependency develops. So you can't drink anything that's not sweet anymore.
Yes, sir.
So your body's now craving, especially when mango season coming in July. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we all want to have that which is sweet. You hear the ice cream truck down the road, and eventually the kids start running towards the ice cream truck.
Yes, sir.
So that's where the dependency comes in. But the point that I'm making, and I want you to get, is that all of that is occurring in the brain.
Yes.
So grace must be applied in the brain. Redemption is in the brain. Everything is occurring there. And so we have to be very careful to make sure that we surround ourselves with people that are going to be positive and helping us to grow and be better, and to pick environments. You don't go Friday night to a club every Friday night. You know, if that's you develop an appetite for the Friday night club and Saturday night club, and then Sunday morning you're rolling into church. You follow? Which is going to be more powerful?
Yes, I understand.
Because I think that the club Saturday night and Friday night and Saturday night may be more rewarding for you, for the individual.
Yes, sir.
Because you're dancing, you feel good, and then what might happen is you may still start drinking, and then you may start using marijuana, and then you may take it to another level, trying cocaine and heroin, because it feels so good. And then after a while, the brain develops this dependency, and now you can't really, you have to pay someone to help you to stop that behavior. Or you wind up in a hospital, or as a matter of fact, you may wind up dead as a result of that. Huh?
End up dead?
Yes.
Okay, sir.
I mean, addiction has a very powerful, addiction, alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, it's all interacting with the brain. Yes, to feel good, it's all going, it has to go to the brain. So an intoxicated brain, you know, that's why drinking alcohol and driving, you know, it can impair your judgment.
Yes, sir.
Can make you feel invincible. It can make you speed more. Next thing you know, you're over in a gully somewhere, you know?
Yes, sir.
Hoping somebody will come and turn the car over and get you out. So a lot of accidents, I think, happen, you know, not only in the United States, but in Jamaica. On weekends, on Friday nights and Saturday nights, people coming from party drunk and driving horribly.
Yes, sir.
And if you notice, most of those accidents are mostly young people. It's not the old people.
Yes, sir.
It's the young people coming from their party late at night, but they're high, they're drunk. And the judgment is impaired. So I know a lot of young girls who died because their boyfriend was so high driving, reckless coming from a club, especially in Jamaica. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. So again, it's all about, you know, the brain, and that's what Freud is trying to emphasize by that phrase.
Yes, sir.
Locke also, you know, emphasize. He says, I can speak, but what I find in myself. When he says what I find in myself, he's talking about in his brain. So okay. Whatever I speak, I already, you know, when I leave my home, whatever you see I found in my closet.
Yes.
So your brain is your closet. Okay. So whatever you say, you find it in your brain.
Yes, sir. You know, I was doing some research about, you know, the brain identity and all of that. I understand that we all are conforming ourselves. I think we saw that, we looked at it, conformism, where we come into the society and we are conditioned by our culture, our country to do certain things. Like, for example, I noticed that most of us as Black people, you know, are being mistreated by the white people, maybe in America. One of the reasons why is because we are socialized in a way to think that they are higher than us. So when we have anything going on in our country, in the Caribbean, we depend on them to bring change, you know, to help. And I can quote even recently, the one who is considered to be the Prime Minister of Haiti has asked or required the USA to help with what is going on. However, we have the means and resources to depend on ourselves and to deal with certain things, but we are not seeing it that way. So a lot of things are in relations when it comes to these things. Environment, depending on what is being done in the area, it is gonna be it is going to reflect your character or you behave normally.
I agree. I think that's a very good sociological, political assessment on your part about, and I was just thinking while you were speaking, do you know the bush jacket? You know what that is? Bush jacket. Have you ever heard that term?
Yes, I do. It's referring to the shirt that we have, like school shirt with,
Right, right,
yes, four
right.
pockets.
And I think I might be off on the dates, but I think it was during 1975 when Michael Manley,
Okay.
was I think it was he referred to it as a democratic socialism, where he began to fight that same idea that we need to depend on ourselves, we need to choose our own friends. Why do we need to wear jacket and tie? Why don't, and that's where the bush jacket came from. So it was a prime minister who started that kind of a thing. And then to this day, I think a lot of Jamaicans find, well, of course, the weather also. The argument is, if it's so hot, why am I going to wear jacket and tie? You follow?
Yes, sir.
So it was more indigenous of that culture. So, but it was started through a political movement. Michael Manley, I think, is the one who initiated that. So I see even your director today, he still wear the bush jacket sometimes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But that's part of that. But also what's really true too, and maybe you're too young for this, but in Grenada rather, when the United States went in and bombed and all the stuff that happened to the prime minister there, where he was eventually killed just before that and stuff like that. But that's what the bishop was his name. That's what they were trying to do,
Yes,
was
sir.
to try to be, let's do our own thing. Let's choose our own friends. Let's not rely on all of this stuff. And then the United States went in because we were building an
Yes.
international airport and stuff like that. The United States went in and bombed small Grenada, because Grenada became a threat. Because if Grenada, the idea is if Grenada, who are Black people, if we don't silence these Black people, all of these Black Caribbean islands may follow what Grenada is doing. And,
Yes.
and we are afraid of that. So they went and shut it down, bombed, and did what they did. So in that analysis, I think is correct. I mean, it is also true that if you look at Africa, they have uranium. They're some of the wealthiest place in the world, but yet they're the poorest because where all their gold go to other European countries. Everybody take everything from them.
Yes, sir. And
And so, yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I have done such research is because due to the ways things are going, I have a lot of my friends and schoolmates which I knew when I was in Haiti. They are like kind of discouraged, like hopeless. They don't know what to do, what to study, how to get a job and all these things. But I'm trying to encourage them to say that I don't think God bring us on this earth to fail. We all are supposed to success. We can make it. We just have to believe and be positive. Try to follow our dreams, our missions. But I understand, like I was comparing them to that elephant which they spoke about when they tie the young elephant with a particular cord or hope, which at that age the elephant could not break out of. But even when the elephant become grow old or grow up, the elephant still believe that I can't break the cord because I've tried so many times and it has overcome. Well, I could not get out of it or get rid of it. So that now is in the mind of the elephant, not because he cannot make it, but he
Right.
just, because of the number of time that he had tried, he still believed that he doesn't have no power on it. So I was trying to help them to understand that I believe God has given all of us abilities which we can manifest and impact the world with. And these things are the things that are going to give us value. So when I look at Exodus 28, when I look at Exodus 31, I found out that God has given to every person like a unique ability or gift which they can use to, to make their living or to live properly. So I was trying to do that just to encourage them, because when you are discouraged, well, you are just going to complain about your situation, but you will not change anything at all. The same situation will go on.
I just typed something there. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the term that was in 1975, a group of researchers interviewing, I think it was like 300 people, and who had experienced tremendous traumas in their life. And they developed the term called learned helplessness. It's a term that is still used today in the legal system, but it's from the same thing that you just said. So that people learn over time to even the culture. Another term that is being used, I think around in the 1960s, is this word right here, the culture of poverty.
Yes, sir.
Which is different from not having money. The culture
Yes,
of poverty is really talking about creating a generation, a culture of poverty where you resign yourself to the process of learned helplessness. But I wanted to say to you, since you mentioned Haiti, Haiti is the first and only country that I know with Black people in the Caribbean who fought and got their independence. It was never Jamaica, it was given to them. Grenada was given to them. All of the Caribbean islands, their freedom was given to them.
yes,
Haiti
sir.
was the only one who actually fought and won and got their freedom. And the
Yes.
person who did that was a guy called Toussaint Willoughby. I think, I pronounced his name correctly.
Toussaint Louverture.
Toussaint, okay, okay. Toussaint, okay, I may have pronounced it incorrectly, but he
Yes,
was
sir.
a slave. He was a slave. And I used to read his story where, because he was handsome and he would ride a galloping horse and be able to mount it while it was running at high speed. I mean, he was a brilliant guy. And I guess one of the master's wife befriended him and stuff like that and all that stuff. But anyway, he became so powerful and he was able to lead his nation to freedom against the French. And the French, eventually, after he won, they invite him for a discussion in France, which he foolishly went. He should never have gone. He
Yes,
died. He died in prison in France. And then the guy who took over, I think it was like William, I don't know what his name, I forget what his name was, who took over from him.
Jean-Jacques Dessalines.
Yeah, that took over from him and actually, led the revolution. But to this day, I believe that Haiti is still paying for that because they were the ones who actually got their independence, fought for it, won it, and got it. And to this day, the larger countries are not going to overlook that. So if you look at Dominican Republic, the next nation right next door, you can walk over to it. You'll see how life is so different from them, as opposed to right there in Haiti. Have you ever been to Dominican Republic? Right there, right across from it?
No, I haven't been there.
Right. But if you see the difference in both of that, where all the big hotels are, tourism are going there, and where the money is going and stuff like that, as opposed to Haiti, which is right next door. Okay, and the same parcel of land, basically. Okay, so you get to see what's happening there. So I think your analysis is really accurate. And I think that, that's when maybe when you graduate, maybe you should really consider, moving back to Haiti and just not, and be able to, start the Christian community there, but not just with the ambition of, starting a local church, but to start maybe a school, where you can begin to educate your people and empower them with Christ being the center of it, to make, especially the young generation, to anchor them in their sense of pride, but also within the Christian standards. And
Yes,
so that might be an ambition, but sometimes, we tend to go where the money's at, don't we?
yes, sir. Most time.
So,
And I have plans. I have plans. And I would eventually go there. Maybe not to be stable or to live permanently there, but I have certain plans, certain things which I would love to accomplish. But since I don't see myself as being as living in a particular place, for a long time, because I think that I have a lot of to do around, just going around doing things which I believe God has given
yeah.
me an inspiration to
But
do.
what really, though, part of the problem you have to be very careful about is that all of the natural resources of Haiti are going, the human resources, that is, your doctors and your lawyers and your nurses and all of those people, are going to the places where they can make the money. So all of the Haitians are going to Dominican Republic to work to clean hotels and do all of that stuff because there's more money there. And then
Yes,
once they get there, then they stay there.
yes, sir.
Follow? And they send their children to school there and they stay there. So what, in a way, you're draining away a lot of the, the human resources from the country. And we see that's why America is so strong and so powerful. That's why Canada and England, because all of the high profile technical people tend to go to those countries because
Yes,
there's
sir.
more money there. All your doctors tend to go there. So migration really is an attempt. It is really something that has to be looked at carefully because it's, like I said, we're talking about the way people are thinking. And the discussion that you're having is about self-pride, having
Yes,
pride as a Haitian person, having pride in my country, being empathic towards young people, within my culture, and trying to motivate them to first identify themselves, recognize themselves, take some pride in
yes,
themselves, and then begin to do that. But sometimes to do that, though, there's going to be sacrifice to do
yes,
that, and you're going to have to give up some stuff, rather than. But if you start chasing the money and stay chasing the privileges, but sometimes we have to be realistic too, because I don't believe that I could have gotten the education that I have now had I stayed in St. Vincent.
okay, sir.
Follow?
Yes, sir.
So just the natural instinct to survive. And that's where, maybe, well, not in this class, but in another class in terms of, development, our instinct, our needs, we tend to go with our needs.
Yes, sir.
And so if you look at Jamaica, the same thing is also true, that a lot of your nurses and doctors are, because Jamaicans have, if you go to New York City, New York, in Brooklyn, all
Okay.
the hospitals, I guarantee you're going to find a lot of Jamaican nurses in all the hospitals, because Jamaica produce a lot of nurses. They
Yes.
educate a lot of nurses, but then they're not able to pay them. So those nurses are being taken here in the United States. So every hospital in Brooklyn, Bronx, and so on are fitted with nurses who were educated in Jamaica.
Okay, sir.
So you have better healthcare here, but most of the people, doctors and so on, are actually Jamaicans. And
Yes,
so it's kind of interesting. So that's what you have to, when you say that I don't want to be in one place, I want to travel. Maybe you're buying into the same situation without really realizing that that's essentially what you're doing.
well, I mean, I know the purpose or the reason why. It's because, first of all, as you said, I have been thinking about building strong schools, Christian schools, because I know of a few in Haiti, maybe roughly about 3.
Mhm.
But people are still not sending their children to these schools because they believe that the education that they are receiving or their children will be receiving won't be strong enough. So that's why they prefer to send their children to Catholic schools.
Right.
And if I am right, it is the same thing in most places in the Caribbean.
Yeah,
So as I
it is.
got
It
the
is a fact.
idea, I don't think about only doing it in Haiti. So if God allows me, I would be doing the same thing in other places in the Caribbean. That's the reason why I say I may be traveling, That's the reason why.
Well, I mean, certainly you can do the same thing as McDonald is doing. The franchise, and they're all over the world, right?
Yes,
Their
sir.
brand is everywhere. So if you're thinking in terms of franchising, that's a good business plan, obviously.
Yes,
It's a wise plan to be able to do that. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's the Seventh Adventist is doing that. They're all over the world and they're very strong.
yes, sir.
And they're
Due
marketed
to
everywhere.
yeah, due to information I know in America they have good schools, Christian school and universities, but not that I know of in the Caribbean or in Haiti, which is my home
Right,
country.
right. And that is true. I memean, here in the United States, though, a lot of colleges are forced with, I mean, Church of Christ institutions are forced with two issues. One, either they have to become more liberal to survive financially, or they have to close their doors because
Really?
people, yeah, yes. As a matter of fact, the college that I graduated from here in the university is closed because they couldn't afford it financially.
What?
And a lot of our Christian university, like Pepperdine, which is the largest in California, Church of Christ, they're so liberal now you can't even recognize them.
Why,
So a
sir?
lot of them have to become more liberal in order to survive financially.
Why? Like why? I don't
Well,
really get it, sir.
because you're going to have to attract, for example, your gays and then lesbians and stuff like that. So if you start excluding those people, then what happens?
Okay, I understand. I think that's something I'm gonna have to think about as well.
Yeah, I'm just saying right now, even the churches of Christ in the United States
Uh,
are,
um,
are,
though,
are moving in
though
a secular way.
Yes, sir. Though I wouldn't basically exclude any person as this. Say,
No,
for
no,
example, I have a visitor in the church where I'm preaching, and that visitor is a lesbian or a gay. I don't think I have the right to exclude him to
right.
tell the person not to come in to maybe assist what is being done.
Yeah. But
You know?
let me just say this though. One of the unique thing about the Jamaica School of Preaching is the fact that it takes people who are of a certain religious conviction. You follow? So they keep it pure.
Yes, sir.
So that if someone who says, "Well, I'm a lesbian and I want to be a part of it," I think the system will say no because it violates our fundamental belief system. So you need more schools like the Jamaica School of Preaching who are going to have a clear mandate as to what their goals are, and what they're there to do. So that's kind of where, but notice Jamaica School of Preaching doesn't take money from the government, so they're not obligated. You follow?
Yes, sir.
But the moment you start taking money from the government, then you have no choice.
Okay,
So,
sir.
so schools like the Jamaica School of Preaching do have a choice because they're not funded by the government,
Yes,
by
sir.
taxpayers' money. But also it makes it difficult for them because they don't have a whole lot of money and they have to go and beg. Follow?
Yes, yes, sir.
So that's why you ought to really be grateful for being as a student in the School of Preaching because of the kind of education that you're getting.
Yes, sir.
And so that's, if you want to duplicate something in Haiti, that's what you want to duplicate.
Yes, sir. All right.
No problem. We got to go, right?
Yes, sir. We got.
Okay. Take
Okay.
care.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you.
Okay, you cut me out.